Cappy McGarr is somebody that I've known for quite a while because Cappy is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Kennedy Center, and all of you probably are familiar with the Kennedy Center, and he's one of the few people appointed by 2 different presidents to be a member of the Board of Trustees, and he is the person who really conceived of the Mark Twain Award, and thank you for doing that. So, Cappy, is that your real first name, Cappy? Where'd you get that name from?
Yes, I'm David. David, by the way, is chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center, as most of you know, as well as the Carlisle Group, and chairman of every single, the Smithsonian, the Library of Congress.
Okay, but your name's Cappy.
Okay. So, no, Cappy is my real name. I was given that name. President Bush, when he was governor, had a nickname for me called the Capster. And so we were at a Kennedy Center function at the White House when he became president. And as you know, when you go through that line, the aide announces you to the president. And so before he could announce my name, Bush looks up and says, "If it's not the Crapper." And Janie, my wife, says, "I think he changed your nickname." Went up, he gave me a big hug. But
where did you get that name, Cappy?
It was my father's roommate in college. Last name was Capilupo, and I was firstborn, and so his nickname was Cappy, and so that's how I got the name.
Okay, so Mark Twain is a very famous humorist. Why did he actually not like the name Samuel Clemens, you know?
I don't.
Okay, he wasn't sure his writing would be so good, so he wanted to have a pseudonym. But okay, so...
I sent Twain my manuscript, and he gave me very few notes back.
All right, so you're on the board of the Kennedy Center, and by the way, what do the trustees of the Kennedy Center actually do?
The board of the trustees of the Kennedy Center, they kind of do the strategy for the Kennedy Center. They raise money for the Kennedy Center. They participate in choosing the Kennedy Center honorees and the Mark Twain Prize honoree.
Okay, so you get to be a member of the board of trustees of the Kennedy Center, and you say, guess what, we don't have a humor award or comedy award, and you said we should have one? Is that how it came about?
Not exactly. Ann Stock was White House Social Secretary under Clinton. And these 3 guys went over there, John Schreiber, Murray Horowitz, and Mark Krantz. And they said, look, we'd like to do a humor award here at the White House. And Ann said, we're not being very funny nowadays. I think there was a scandal, which we won't go into, but there was a big scandal. So he said, but I'm going to go over to the Kennedy Center being head of institutional relations, which is actually dealing with the Congress. The Kennedy Center gets $35 to $40 million every year from the Congress, as you know, which is very important money to the Kennedy Center. Said, but I'm going to go over there. Let's present this over there. And so the president of the Kennedy Center, Larry Wilker, knew I was in town and knew that I had a radio program growing up and going to college and did voices and impressions. And he said, would you like to join us? And so we had a meeting in his office and came up with the idea of the Mark Twain Prize. Mark Twain was the first stand-up comedian, if you will. After all the money he made from Mark Twain, from Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, he invested in this teletype machine, and it was a loser, and he lost all of his money. So he went around the country basically going to all these theaters and telling stories and being a humorist and being funny about the Congress and funny about the country. And
so what's the difference between a politician and a humorist?
That's a very good question. One dresses up in a suit and goes around the country and getting people to laugh at them, and the other are comedians.
Okay. All right. So you decide you want to have a humor award. You're going to name it after Mark Twain.
Right.
Did you think about anybody else you could name it after, or that was the obvious choice?
We thought about naming it after you, but...
okay. So you name... All right, so Mark Twain. All right, so the first year you're going to have a Mark Twain Award. Whenever you have an award the first time, you have to get somebody to take the award. So who was your first choice?
We had Richard Pryor as our first choice. He was incredibly influential in comedy. Most people don't know this, but he co-wrote Blazing Saddles with Mel Brooks. And he was enormously influential with all the comedians that followed him. Okay. And Jean Kennedy Smith, who was ambassador to Ireland at the time, she was on the board of the Kennedy Center. Jim Johnson was chairman of the board, and so we had, when we honored Richard Pryor, we had everybody. We had Harry Belafonte, we had just a spectacular, Whoopi Goldberg, we had a spectacular list of people honoring Richard Pryor, and every one of them got up and said Mark Twain would have been so happy that Richard Pryor was getting the Mark Twain Prize in his name. And every one of them got up, and Chris Rock was at the end. He just gotten off of Saturday Night Live, and he was obviously still is one of the great comedians in the country. And he stands up there and he says, I've heard all this MF BS all night long about how Mark Twain would have been so happy about Richard Pryor. He said, that's the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard in my life. What he would have said, he'd have said, say, Ian, take my MF bag upstairs right now. Well, laughter broke up in the concert hall of the Kennedy Center because we had new people. By the way, Jay and I, it was a hard ticket to sell, and we bought out a third of the concert hall that night. And so the next morning we're having this meeting, and Jim Johnson said, Cappy, you know, you worked really hard on this, give us a report. I said, we lost 100 grand. So we'd like to do this. We brought new people in. And by the way, you know this, but it grosses $2.5 million now. And so that's a great thing for the Kennedy Center. But Jim Johnson said, you know, let's take a vote. We got to vote on it for next year. And everybody voted except one person voted no, and that was Gene Kennedy Smith. And I said, well, God, you know, it's really wonderful. So we're walking over to the board meeting, and Jim says, Cappy, I'm sorry, the Twain's dead. I said, God, we only got one vote against it. He said, it's the sister of the President of the United States that this building's named after. So if she's against it, it's not going to happen. So I made a beeline to Jean, and I said, Ambassador, Madam Ambassador, I said, you voted no. And she said, my brother would have been horrified with the N-word and the F-word said on the stage bearing his name. And I said, well, Ambassador, your brother stood for great charm, humor, wit, and I think he would have been very happy about the laughter that erupted all night long on the stage bearing his name. I said, if you just give us another chance, well, you know, I mentioned a lot of people we could honor down the road, and I said, but I really would wish you'd change your mind. And she did, and so the rest is history. So that was the beginning of the Mark Twain Prize.
So once again, the reports of Mark Twain's death were premature, right?
They are. He's still alive, and every year at the Kennedy Center. Okay,
so who are you going to honor this year?
Jon Stewart, April 24th. He's really unbelievable, and as all you know, I mean, he's in the mold as Lorne Michaels, because Lorne is one of the obviously most important people in comedy in the last 50 years because of all the people that were SNL and left. We've honored many of them, including Lorne Michaels, not only with the Kennedy Center Honors, but also with the Mark Twain Prize. But Jon Stewart's had incredible influence in, I mean, Samantha Bee, Stephen Colbert, Jason Sudeikis. I mean, you go down the list of everybody that has appeared on his show, and early on, I mean, he's incredibly important. He also is in the Twain, the image of Twain, and Twain, he is kind of a modern Mark Twain, the modern Mark Twain. I mean, he talks about social context. He talks about social issues. He was, you know, really did a lot of stuff for the 9/11.
All right, well, suppose I want to go see it. Can I buy tickets to Mark Twain?
You can buy tickets. You can buy tickets.
Okay.
They can either see you or me after.
All right, and is it televised?
It is televised. PBS has done it for every year. The first 2 years was on Comedy Central, and every year has been on PBS.
So who was the funniest person you've given the award to?
I'm not going to answer that. They're all funny.
All funny.
You know, Steve Martin was hilarious. Will Ferrell probably had one of the funniest, you know, acceptance speeches. We had the bust of the Mark Twain Prize is from the Mark Twain House, and it's a very heavy bronze. And we did plaster of Paris for Will. We had 16 of them made. And so when he got presented the Mark Twain Prize, it was this plaster of Paris bust. He said, gosh, this is the most important thing in my life. I will never leave it. I'll put it on a shelf so my kids can't touch it. And he walks over to put it on the podium, and he drops it, and it shatters into 1,000 pieces. It's on YouTube because this is really funny, by the way. And he puts slowly the half Mark Twain head, but you know, they're all funny. I mean, Carol Burnett is just one of the most brilliant comedians in our history, and she won the Twain and also the honors.
So you've begun a tradition of taking the Mark Twain Prize winners to the White House.
Yes.
And do the presidents like to see these people, or what?
They love to see these people. Comes to mind Eddie Murphy. I took Eddie Murphy in to see President Obama. And the president says, Eddie, you and I are the same age. You have no gray hair. I've got a lot of gray hair. And the president looks at Eddie and says, you know, I mean, Eddie looks at the president and says, you know, all I do is make people laugh, and you've got a very stressful job. And the president looks at me and says, Cappy, I'm funny, aren't I? I said, yes, Mr. President, you are really funny. And he said, I got great timing. I said, the perfect timing. And then we took Eddie and his family that afternoon on a tour of the White House. And he's standing in front of the Ronald Reagan portrait. This is right before the Hillary Clinton-Trump election in November. This is in October. And I'm standing behind him, and he's looking at the Ronald Reagan portrait. I go, well, Eddie, welcome to the White House. Mommy and I are glad to hear it. Just don't rearrange the furniture. He turns around, he goes, well, that's a good Reagan to do anymore. And I said, well, I do Carter. He said, well, let me hear it. I said, the White House is a great example for Habitat for Humanity. He goes, okay, I don't do anymore. I said, well, I'll do Clinton. He said, let me hear Clinton. I hope Hillary wins. I'll be interviewing interns, as you know. So we bonded, and but Eddie Murphy was fun and funny, and they're all funny. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't give them the Mark Twain Prize without them being funny.
So have you ever had a problem where you give the award to somebody and he died before you gave the award out?
Yes, George Carlin. We honored George Carlin, and a week later, and he passed away with a heart attack. And so he was the only person that we've honored posthumously.
And do you get people calling you all the time saying, you know, I really deserve it, but I don't really want it, but I deserve it? Do you get that?
We do get a lot of people that do that, and we get agents that do that.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you mention any of them?
No.
Okay. And you've tried over the years to give the award to Mel Brooks.
Yes.
What happened there? He hasn't gotten it.
He hasn't gotten it because he said no 3 or 4 times. He's 95, David. If he said yes today, we'd give him the Mark Twain Prize. We got Carl Reiner, and by the way, Carl Reiner he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was one of the great Twain recipients. And I'm going to digress just for a moment because you asked me about the White House, and this is one of the most moving moments I've ever had in the Oval Office, and I know, David, you've had some moving moments as well, but Carl's brother, Charlie, was dying of cancer. And so I arranged to have Carl and all kind of Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke, Rob Reiner, Jerry Seinfeld were all in the cabinet room going in to meet the president. So the White House Social Secretary says, Cappy, if you'll be there first, the president's going to know everybody. He knows everybody that's coming in, but he'll know the famous people, but just introduce them to, you know, the wives or the girlfriends or whatever. I said, fine. So Carl said, can I bring Charlie, my brother, who's dying of cancer? And I said, sure. He said, and then we're in the cabinet room, and he says, Charlie's got oxygens in his nose, and he said, I'd like to have Charlie go through first because we don't know how long his energy will last. So Carl pushes him into the Oval Office, and I said, Mr. President, this is Charlie, and the President kind of pushes me away and says, Cappy, you don't have to introduce me to Charlie Reiner. Clinton gets on his knees, grabs Charlie's hands, looked him in the eye, and said, I've had a lot of important people in my office, but you're one of the most important people that I've met in this office. You were in the first wave of Normandy Beach, and Clinton went through 8 different things that Charlie had shown bravery on. I mean, Carl was crying, I was crying, it was just a very moving moment.
So when you take these people and they go into the Situation Room, and the Situation people, they get up and talk with them, who's minding the store?
Nobody.
So like if there's a war breaking out, nobody's paying attention when you have these comedians in there?
Nobody pays attention. They go in. I've taken all these comedians in the Situation Room. All these young kids stand up. And I think it was Steve Martin said, good God, sit down, because we don't want the world to blow up. But the Situation Room, as you know, is a small room. It's not a very big room, and they've got these rows of young kids. I mean, they can't be older than 40 in every single branch of the government, intelligence. It's pretty amazing.
But is it really a TV set? Are really people working there, or is it just for people to go and tour?
I think it's people to go in and tour.
Right. So where did you develop your sense of humor? Did you get this as a young person, and did you ever want to be a stand-up comedian yourself?
I definitely wanted to be a stand-up comedian. That didn't work out. Got my MBA and went to work for Goldman Sachs. I should have worked for Carlyle, by the way.
Goldman Sachs has done pretty well, too.
Well, yeah, but not as well as Carlyle. But in any event.
Okay.
No, I mean, you know, I love making people laugh. And as Tina Fey said when she got the award, her family, her parents were sitting in the balcony where we sit all the families of the honorees. And she said, you know, It's been said that someone who is funny has had a very difficult childhood and had a very difficult background. And she looked up and she said, "What did you animals do to me?" Which was funny.
So when we honored Eddie Murphy, the way the tradition works is the people come and honor the honoree. And is it hard to get these honorees, the people to come in for free and say funny things about him, or is it easy to get them to do that?
It's really easy. It was even easy. I was going to say it was easy when we honored Bill Cosby, and we took his honor away for obvious reasons, and we took his Kennedy Center honors away for obvious reasons. But we didn't have Cosby was difficult. He didn't take the award because he saw the very first Twain. He didn't like, and I'm not making this up, he didn't like the language that Chris Rock used. So he thought that Twain was a show that had
Okay, but later he took the award.
Later he took the award.
Okay, so when you gave the award to Eddie Murphy, the way the tradition works is they have the stars perform, then the honoree comes up and says thank you. But with Eddie Murphy, we couldn't find him for like 45 minutes. Where had he disappeared to?
Eddie has his own schedule, and it was delayed for a long time. I don't know exactly why, but
couldn't find him. Okay.
We could not find him, and we had Dick Gregory there, Trevor Noah there, Dave Chappelle, and they were all waiting for him. He finally showed up.
Okay, so now you have written a book. And
Yes.
the book is, we have a copy of it somewhere?
It's right
There it
over
is.
there. It's The Man Who Made Mark Twain Famous.
All right, The Man Who Made Mark Twain Famous.
I was very fortunate. Ken Burns and I are very close personal friends. I started his board, the Better Angels Society, and I asked Ken to, Walter is on that board as well. Walter actually is doing two of Walter's books, Leonardo da Vinci and also Benjamin Franklin. Thank you, Walter. But I just want...
The joy of being on that board.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you have two. I only have one suggestion that I gave to Ken, and that was country music. So so I know you have two, but I have one. But in the cover,
So you have this book. Now, did the world say they wanted you to write this book? What propelled you to write this book?
I wanted to write this book. First of all, we've got a lot of problems in the world, and to pause once a year and honor people who make us laugh and bring us joy. We've got so many problems in our personal lives around the world. Obviously, this Ukraine-Russia thing is just horrifying. And laughter still is just an incredible part of all of our lives.
Now, your wife is here. Why did she want to marry you?
Because I was...
What? That's the answer to that is?
Because I'm so tall and handsome.
And funny.
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 Okay, so each year when we have the Mark Twain Award, the funniest part of it actually occurs before
Right.
the prize is given out in public, because there's a rehearsal dinner, and at the rehearsal dinner, people let down their hair even more and say things they can't quite say in public sometimes.
Right.
But the master of ceremonies is always you.
Yes.
So do you prepare for that, and how do you test out your jokes to make sure they're going to work?
I test them out on Janie. I test them out on anybody that walking down the street. I'll pause and no. I mean, I work on it. I've got people that help me, but I work on it for a month or more. One of the most inappropriate things I said that got a huge laugh when we honored Carol Burnett. Tina Fey actually was my dinner partner. By the way, Ken says in his foreword, Cappy name drops, picks the names back up, and then shamelessly drops them again, which really irritated me. And my index is not the index, it's the name drop directory. But anyway, back to the Carol Burnett. We're honoring Carol Burnett. And I got on, I said, Carol, congratulations, you won the Kennedy Center Honors, and we're so delighted that you decided to have us bestow the Mark Twain Prize on you. But Carol Lott got her start, like many young aspiring actresses, on a mattress. It got a huge laugh. Carol knew my joke, and she let me get the laugh. And she then, after it, she goes, only once? Huge laugh, huge laugh. And I said, yes, Carol got her first Tony nomination, Once Upon a Mattress on Broadway. So I get back down to the table, and Tina Fey goes, hey, mattress joke, solid. And Janie says, please don't say that. His head is too big anyway.
So when Johnny Carson used to give a joke in his monologue, and bombed, he would just go on to the next thing and kind of make fun of it. Do you ever have any jokes that bomb, and what do you do?
Oh, yeah, and I just go on to the next one. Just, you know, the panic in the stomach, leaves, and then you go on to the next joke, and the next joke, hopefully you get a laugh.
Well, when you're giving jokes in front of professional comedians, isn't that a little intimidating?
Not only intimidating, but no, David, are you kidding? Sure it is. I work on my material. I try to get funny and try to, I'm just basically introducing people and, saying, and I've introduced you many times, which you've told me not to ever tell the joke about you that I've made over and over again. It always gets a huge laugh, but.
All right, so people who are comedians often, sometimes they might be African-American, they might be Jewish, they might be Italian, but you're not any of that. So how did you get to be funny?
I don't know.
I mean.
Well, I married a Jew, so does that count?
Okay, well, it's progress. Okay, so did you get in trouble when you were a little boy and told jokes?
All the time. This is in the book, and I can't spell, and I have terrible grammar, and so I know Walter doesn't. He probably does his own spelling and grammar. But I was in the sixth grade, and Mrs. Howell was our teacher, and she said, we have a spelling test. And so I took the spelling test. I got like a D-. So the next week, she says, everyone did very well except Cappy. He made a D- in front of the whole class. I mean, I was horrified. So I went home, cried to my grandmother. She said, we're going to memorize all of these spelling words for your next spelling test. I said, Mom, I'm so hurt. This woman, horrible. So I memorized all the words, got back in the class, and then Mrs. Howell says, is everybody ready for the test except Cappy? And so I raised my hand. She said, yes, Cappy. I said, Ms. Howell, if I make 100, will you kiss my honey? Go to the principal's office. Go to the principal's office right now. So, yes, I got in trouble. But
did you get 100?
I got 100.
And what happened?
And I was a hero with the class because I had back-talked to Ms. Howell.
Okay. So today, would you say that humor exists in Washington other than the Kennedy Center Honors, or not so much? Humor
exists in Washington because mainly we have the Mark Twain Prize. But I will tell you this, politicians, the great thing about humor is that when and you know this, David, because you've got a very great sense of humor, but when you're giving a speech and you can make a self-effacing humor about yourself, you're going to get the audience to like you. If you're a CEO, you're going to do that. If you're a politician, you're going to do that. Every politician has their favorite joke that they can break the ice on. So humor is very, very important. But, humor kind of took I guess a recess over the last 2 years because of COVID, and so because a lot of these comedians could not be not only on television, but they couldn't go and around and make money by doing stand-up.
Right. So somebody said to you now, give us a joke, make us laugh. What would you have any jokes?
No, not this very second, David.
Any.
But I mean, I've got a lot of jokes that are very inappropriate to do here at the University of Tulane.
All right. Well, let me give a joke.
Okay.
All right. Here's a joke. At the Kennedy School at Harvard, there is a forum named after John Kennedy Jr., who tragically died in an airplane crash. And under the rules at the Kennedy School, if you want to speak at the forum, you have to speak and then answer questions from students. You can't just speak and then get off the stage. So with that understanding, Mikhail Gorbachev came to the Kennedy School a number of years ago, and he said, okay, he would speak and answer questions from students. He doesn't understand English that well, so he had his daughter interpreting. And then a student got up after the speech was over and said, Mr. Gorbachev, how would the world have been different if Nikita Khrushchev had been killed on November of 1963 rather than John Kennedy? And without missing a beat, he said, well, look, how can anybody know how the world would change? It's just impossible to say. But one thing I can say for certain is that Aristotle Onassis would not have married Mrs. Khrushchev. All right, that was a clean.
Well, you asked me about Mel Brooks. Let me tell you the Mel Brooks story because you're a part of it. We've always wanted to honor Mel Brooks. One of the reasons I wanted to start the Mark Twain Prize is to meet Mel Brooks. I think he's one of the greatest comedians and the movies, a stand-up, 2,000-Year-Old Man, first a writer on the Shows of Shows with Sid Caesar. And he turned us down every time. Carl Reiner asked him, turned us down. And so Deborah Rutter, the president of Kennedy Center, called me and said, would you like to have dinner with Mel Brooks? And I said, God, are you, yeah, of course. Said, we're paying him money to come to the Kennedy Center. We're going to show Blazing Saddles, and for 90 minutes he's going to speak about it, the making of Blazing Saddles. And he said, but you can have dinner. And so I saw you at a dinner before this dinner, about a week before this dinner. I saw you at a Washington dinner, fancy dinner. I said, you said, well, when are you coming back to Washington? I said, on Thursday. He said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to have dinner with Mel Brooks. And you said, where? And I said, at the Kennedy Center. You said, well, can I come? Well, I don't know, David. I've got to talk to the chairman first. But so you and I got there early. Right. We're like kids in a candy store. And Deborah comes up and says, what are you guys doing? She said, come on, let's go in the green room. So Mel Brooks, in his contract, and I'm not making this up, in Mel Brooks, he's 95, and remember this, he has egg salad sandwiches that were piled up like a pyramid. He's got real Coke, not Diet Coke, a bag of Oreo cookies, this is in his contract, and a bag of Lay's potato chips, not wavy Lay's, but real Lay's potato chips. And that's the diet of a 95-year-old. So we should all have that diet. So David and I are sitting there in the green room, and finally Mel Brooks comes in, and I get to meet my comedic hero. And David would never say this, but I think David really likes him a lot too. And so we're interviewing him and are talking to him and having lunch. And I'm sitting on the piano bench. You're sitting on the kind of the couch, the edge of the couch, and Deborah's pulled up a metal chair, and Mel's sitting on the couch. And I said, you know, Mel, we've asked you 3 or 4 times to take the Mark Twain Prize, and you said no. He said, yeah, I don't know. I said, let's do the music of Mark Twain. He goes, well, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll think about that. I said, look, and I'm not going to tell you what the number 6 is in Blazing Saddles. Y'all can Google it because it's incredibly inappropriate. But number 6 is one of the funniest scenes in motion picture history. And I said, Mel, if you don't take the Mark Twain Prize, I'm going to have to do a number 6 on you. And he burst out laughing. I had a little bit of egg salad on me, so I haven't washed that suit, by the way. But anyway, Mel Brooks, 2 weeks later, turned us down. One of the great things, the nicest things that Deborah Rutter ever did, I said, Mel, I'd love to have my picture made with you, and I'd like to give my camera to your aide. And he goes, well, sure. So he turns to you and turns to Deborah and said, let's all get in. And Deborah says, no, Cappy just wants his picture made with you, Mel. I got the great picture in the book with me and Mel, but in any event. Well,
the reason there's so many egg salad sandwiches there, you didn't tell this, is that for every bite of egg salad sandwich he does, about 3/4 of it gets on his sport coat. So as you're watching him, the entire place is filled with egg salad sandwiches all over it. And so you kind of wonder why he bothers not using napkins or something. Anyway, he was a pretty funny guy. So today, who actually picks the Kennedy Center honorees? Do you? I mean, not the Kennedy Center, but the Mark Twain Award.
It is a group of people. It's the leadership of the Kennedy Center. We have a list. Our list would be probably the same as y'all's list. You and Deborah and I and a guy that works for the Kennedy Center for a long time, Matthew Weiner, we all get together and we go over the list. We have some suggestions. You take it to the executive committee and the board, and that's how the Twain.
Okay. So if you want to learn more about the Mark Twain Award,
right,
is the best way to buy your book?
Yes, that and buy tickets to the Mark Twain Prize.
Okay. All right. So the book right there, it is called?
The Man Who Made Mark Twain Famous.
Okay. And, okay, did Mark Twain's descendants ever call you up or complain about using his name in the book title?
No, I think they were very happy. In fact, it was the Mark Twain House gave me a...
really?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody have any questions? Oh, there's Walter Isaacson.
I got a question because this is a book festival. It's a little bit of a pushback. But in the entire history of the Mark Twain Award, you've only once, I think, given it to a writer, a humor writer, Neil Simon. Have you ever thought about giving it to the great humor writers in America, and who would be on your list?
We did give it to Neil Simon, and there are humor writers on that list. But we haven't, because the Mark Twain Prize, we'd like to get, Neil Simon obviously is one of the great comedy writers, not only plays but also books and movies. But we'd like to have our honorees have a full career in a lot of different aspects of comedy, whether it be television shows. Tina Fey was the youngest television writer in history, so obviously Tina Fey is a writer. She's written a lot of books. And stand-up obviously is important. Movies is, critically important. I mean, Will Ferrell has written a book. In fact, as Will Ferrell started Funny or Die with Adam McKay, and it's been, I think he made more money on that than he has done at any one of his movies. But I mean, that's a really good point, Walter. Yes, we do have writers on our list, but so.
Well, Walter's speaking up for writers because he thinks the writers are very important people, which they are. But we have to sell tickets, and sometimes writers, this is hard to believe, they don't get enough credit for what they write in humor. Sometimes the humor writers, like very few people could probably name the writers of the Saturday Night Live show. It's written by a lot of people, but they're not that well known. So we often have to make sure that we've got somebody that's got enough public attention so you can get people to show up for them and also sell some tickets to some extent. Unfortunately, a lot of writers aren't as well known as maybe they should be, but that's not the case in people like you. Yes.
Why is Mel Brooks not accepting awards?
Well, we gave him the Kennedy Center Honors. He has an EGOT, the Emmy, Tony, Grammy, Oscar. And maybe he just doesn't think the Mark Twain Prize is something that he wants to accept. I mean, but he definitely deserves it. He's, you go back to all of his movies, except for Spaceballs. I'm kidding, Mel. But, the producers, Young Frankenstein. Yeah, I'm reading it now. It's funny. Yeah, he's a iconic individual, and hope before he dies we're able to say Mel Brooks. I mean, David and I will fly out to his office in Hollywood and give him the Mark Twain Prize. David, are you with me?
Give him the longevity prize too. I would like to know the secrets of how you live 95 years old. At the Kennedy Center, we've honored a number of people over the years who are in their mid-90s, and sometimes you wonder whether they're going to be able to do it. We just honored Dick Van Dyke for the Kennedy Center Honors about 2 years ago. He was 96 years old, showed up, danced a little jig in the White House in the Oval Office, and was in good shape. When we've honored some other people who are 95, 94. Sometimes they're in great shape. You never know. Mel Brooks might outlive us all.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and then yes.
I went to University of Texas when you were there, and I dated a fraternity brother of yours, and I was wondering how you rationalize the KA mentality now with the Old South weekend and that kind of thing.
You can't. You can't justify it.
Are there any changes?
I don't know. I've not been involved with my fraternity for 35 years, so I really don't know that. But, they needed to make the change, and so hopefully, I think they have. Or
But you say you dated a fraternity brother of his? And what did he say about Cappy?
I was a big fan.
Did he say it was good things? Okay, what did he really say?
Who was it?
Bill Sullivan.
Oh, sure.
Okay, here, and then we'll go there.
Yes, hi, I'm Bill Kufta. Fortunately, my family is from Elmira, New York, and our family plot will be I'll be about 83 paces, depending on my exact location, from where Mark Twain is buried. Because he married Olivia Langdon, and he wrote a lot of his work right all around Elmira, which is a really, so I've always been fascinated, obviously, and I didn't know whether you had any questions you wanted me to ask him.
All right, well, ask him if his death is really premature. I mean, maybe is you sure he's really there?
Yes, he's there.
He's there.
Yeah, he's there. It's the plot, right?
And you're going to be, how far are you going to be from him? You don't know.
85 feet.
85 feet, okay.
85 feet, so I think I'd be hanging with him.
I'm going to find out where Mel Brooks is going to be buried, and I want to be buried.
The other thing, this is, there are younger people here, but people of our age, I've always, in addition to Mark Twain, Will Rogers has been one of my favorite writers. He didn't need a writer, he just said he read the newspaper. and that was his, but I always thought he would be somebody, if he was alive now, that Will Rogers would have possibly been a
There's no question about it. I mean, Bob Hope would have been. I mean, there's a lot of people. Unfortunately, we started the Mark Twain Prize 23 years ago. This is our 23rd or 24th year, so there's a lot of people. And we have a policy at the Kennedy Center not to honor, except for George Carlin, because he accepted it, and we had a big press conference and all that stuff. We do the same thing with the Kennedy Center honors. We don't honor someone who is, we want them there.
But his type of humor.
His type of humor. I mean, Mark Twain, Jon Stewart is the Mark Twain of our day, in my opinion, and so was Will Rogers, with the Mark Twain of his day. Well, Will Rogers was the Will Rogers of his day, so, I mean, I'm not going to take anything from him.
I've been in the investment business for 50 years now. On my office wall is one of Will Rogers' great quotes. Since the stock market's been really volatile lately.
Right.
And it is this, he said at a press conference with writers, scribbling things down, what he said the stock market's easy. He says you go out, you find good companies, you buy them, and then he pauses, he says, and watch them go up. And he says if they don't go up, don't buy them. So, and they all
Exactly.
Well, my favorite statement by him was, by Will Rogers, is the country's never safe as long as Congress is in session. Right here, and then we'll go there, and then we'll go there. Sorry.
Wearing my Mark Twain shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wearing my Mark Twain shirt, and I wanted to thank you for the Gershwin Award.
You're welcome. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm a music guy. But I'm curious, since you're both members of the Council on Foreign Relations, who's the funniest guy there?
Where?
Yeah,
The Council on Foreign Relations?
Richard Haas.
I don't know. We just had the Gershwin Award this week.
Yeah.
And we honored, it was very good event. We honored Lionel Richie. You look like you have your Mark Twain hairdo, too. Okay, here and then there, okay?
Legend has it that Twain took his name from Isaiah Sellers, the river pilots here in New Orleans.
Yes, I think that you're absolutely right about that.
Right, okay. Oh, wait a second. Here's a question.
Isaiah Sellers was the dean of river pilots going back even before steamboats. And he wrote pieces for the Picayune, which he signed Mark Twain. He was a pretty pompous fellow. So Twain wrote a parody, which he had published at the urging of his other pilots in the Delta. And Isaiah Sellers never wrote another word. Well, the Civil War sent Twain west. He goes to California, and the next thing you know, he hears that Isaiah Sellers has died. And he was very regretful that he had made fun of Sellers, but that didn't keep him from taking his name.
Right. Okay, here.
This is a tough question. In a conversation I once had with Dan Aykroyd, I asked him, who's the funniest comedian of all time? And he said, no question about it. My personal favorite is Eddie Murphy, who became famous 48 hours with one line, his new sheriff. So my question to you is, if you had to pick 1, 2, and 3, who do you think is the best comedians?
Going back, I mean, they're all different. I mean, like Carl Reiner, started writing with Mel Brooks on for Sid Caesar's on your shows. He created the 2,000-Year-Old Man. He was a stand-up comedian. He created the Mary Tyler Moore Show. He did Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid with Steve Martin. Had a lot of Steve Martin. By the way, when we honor Steve Martin, I'm emceeing the cast dinner. We're in the National Gallery, and from floor to ceiling, there are paintings all over all 4 walls. And Carl Reiner looks at Steve and says, "You're so smart. You're collecting all these paintings. Who painted that? And who painted that?" It takes him about 20 minutes. Goes all the way around the room, and the curator was there. And so Carl says, "How many did he miss?" He said he missed 2. So, funny is funny, and Tina Fey is hilarious. But they're each different in their own way. Eddie Murphy is, not only is Eddie Murphy funny, but he's also incredibly nice. And you have a different view of these people when you spend, time around them, and you see, like for example, Bill Murray. He stopped at every single person in the White House and shook their hand, looked him in the eye and said, what do you do? And tell me about your family. And he went in the kitchen and talked to all the chefs and the sous chefs and the waiters. And I mean, he's just a genuinely nice person. By the way, the White House calls me about a week before, this is when President Obama was president, and said, would Bill do a Affordable Health Care Act, a public service announcement? And I said, well, let me ask him. So I texted him, and Bill said, yeah, I guess so, but no script. I said, okay. So we're in the cabinet room waiting to meet the president, and this aide comes in and says, Mr. Murray, here's your script for the PSA. And he goes, Bill looks at me and goes, Cappy, I told you no script. So I said to this young kid, I mean, literally looked like he was 12. I said, no, please tell the president there won't be a script. I know he's a good ad-libber, and I know that Bill Murray's one of the great ad-libbers. He said, okay. And so he goes in. It was right before the Cubs won the World Series, but they were not in the World Series yet. And as everyone knows, the president is a big White Sox fan, not a Cubs fan. So when we're at the Four Seasons picking Bill up, he goes, do you mind if I wear this Cubs jacket? And I said, you're Bill Murray, you can wear whatever. I said, you know, the president's a White Sox fan. He said, I know. And so we go in the office, and the president, very first thing the president says, I'm a White Sox, you're the first Cub, I cannot believe you're in the Oval Office. Anyway, so they're filming the Affordable Health Care Act spot, and they decided to do a contest, putting a golf ball into a cup. And Bill says, I'm not putting in that paper cup. Get a glass cup because you can't hear a ding. So the president calls out, shouts out, get a glass cup. So they get a glass cup, and they bet $1 a hole. And Bill puts the first one in, clink. President misses. The president's very competitive, so he didn't do this on purpose. He misses every single one of them, all 5 holes. And Bill Murray puts in every ball. So we're walking out of the Oval Office. The president turns to me and said, you know, Cappy, when you lose a game of golf, said, you got to pay up. I said, yes, Mr. President, you owe Bill $5. So the president turns to his aide and said, hey, do you have $5? And so I said, can I take a picture of this? And he goes, no, you can't. But
was Bill Murray called you Flappy, or was it somebody else?
No, that was at the Supreme Court when I was emceeing for Bill Murray, and you were sitting in between David Letterman and Jimmy Kimmel.
Right.
And I see Jimmy Kimmel as I'm introducing Jimmy Kimmel. Was I doing a funny introduction? Of course. And I know that he's asking you, now, what is his name? So he comes up and he goes, Nappy, thank you so much. And so the one thing you can't do is back talk to a comedian. So he goes and sits down, and I'm introducing Bill Hader. And I said, by the way, Jimmy, my name's Cappy, like a baseball cap. Bill Hader comes up and goes, Slappy, it is so nice. Thank you so much. Everybody got up, changed my nickname, Slappy, Nappy, Cappy.
So, what kind of question?
Yes, he got our 10th. That was our actually very first. We've done 2 rehearsal dinners at the Supreme Court, and we honored Billy Crystal at the Supreme Court.
Yes.
There is a definitely direct line, and when you read my book, you'll find that out. But I did not. I was a sidekick. The disc jockey was a guy that I went in and recorded a Jimmy Stewart ad for a charitable event that was happening in Austin. And I said, this Jon Stewart, and well, there's a wonderful event for children that are ill and sick, and so come to the rodeo, and so this disc jockey heard me. He said, God, it's a great, you can't do that, by the way, anymore, because Woody Allen sued, and the Supreme Court said you've got to pay whoever you're doing the voice and impression, or get their permission. And so I went in and did about 35 different voices and impressions. He said, hey, would you like to be a sidekick? And so Dolph Briscoe was the governor of Texas, and he closed down the whorehouse in LaGrange, Texas. And there's a movie, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. And so my name on the radio was Goober Hodecker, and it had a kind of a country accent. This is Goober Hodecker, and I have a horny toad ranch in LaGrange, and it's mating season, and it's crazy there. And so I went in, you know, twice a week. It recorded every single day, and it was a lot of fun, and Janie was horrified.
I didn't know you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we have time for one more question. Yes, speak up loudly.
You mentioned that you have revoked Cosby's honors and awards, obviously rightfully so. I know that maybe 2-3 years ago, the Mark Twain Award was given to Dave Chappelle, and considering the disparaging and at times frankly dangerous remarks that he's made about the transgender community, I was wondering if there was any discussion around.
When this controversy came up, I wrote an op-ed in the USA Today. Dave Chappelle did not say disparaging things about transgender. He talked about this woman who wanted to be a stand-up comic, and she was transgender. And he let her be his warm-up act, and she did terrible. And so he worked with her on her next deal, which she then performed for him. You know, this is several years, months down the road, and she was just terrible. When she killed herself, he set up a huge trust fund for her daughter. And so when she gets 18, and my essence of my op-ed was, you know, leave Dave Chappelle alone. Let's lift up transgender people. You go back in the history of comedy, Lenny Bruce went to jail so many times. Carlin went to the Supreme Court of the 7 words you can't say on radio and television. The only thing that happened to Dave Chappelle is he trended on Twitter. So I think it was an unfortunate controversy. Dave Chappelle does not dislike transgender people, and he proved it by you know, if you watch his closer on Netflix, it ends in a very warm and loving way about this transgender woman that he tried to help. So
we're just about out of time. If I close with one joke?
Sure.
Joke.
Absolutely.
It's bad when you tell people you're going to tell a joke because they don't laugh, then you got problems. All right, so this is a story about the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts. And I interviewed him in front of members of Congress not long ago, and I asked him the question, did you always want to be Chief Justice of the United States as a little boy? He said, no, I had no interest in being Chief Justice. Did you want to be a judge? No, I didn't want to be a judge either. Did you want to be a lawyer? No, I didn't want to be a lawyer either. What did you want to be when you were little? All I wanted to be was an American historian. I wanted to learn American history. That's all I cared about. My father said, John, you'll starve to death if you're an American historian. There's no money there. You won't be able to support your family. And John said, Dad, I don't really care. I just care about American history. So John went off to college, went to Harvard, and he came back for spring break in his sophomore year from Indiana, gets off the plane in Boston, gets in the cab and says to the cab driver, please take me to Cambridge. And the cab driver said, are you a student at Harvard? Yes, I am. What are you studying? I'm majoring in American history. And the cab driver said, well, when I was a student at Harvard, that's what I majored in also. John decided to go to law school. Cappy, I want to thank you very much for
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Honor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So